Welcome back to Trust Your Gut. This is our October edition.
Mhm.
The seasons have changed, and I am Erin Trent Johnson, here with you with Dr. A, Antonio Aragona, Doctor of Ayurvedic Medicine. And we're really talking about what happens um, uh, or at least what I've been experiencing with this seasonal change. And it really helped us surface our topic for this month. So I'm going to kick it off to Dr. A. Um, and help us bring our topic, bring our topic forward.
Yes, good morning. It's great to be here again. It's October. And it's officially like cleansing season according to Ayurveda called Panchakarma season. So that's a very involved sort of like I remember learning about Panchakarma in clinicals many years ago as a non-surgical surgery. And why it's considered non-surgical, it's like I'm not necessarily, or we're not trained to necessarily cut in, although as Ayurvedic physicians, when you're trained properly and things like that. In India, you can do surgery in Ayurveda, called Shalya Tantra, which is like surgical procedures in Ayurvedic hospitals and clinics and facilities. But Panchakarma itself, it's not an incision, it's an extrapolation, it's an expulsion of accumulated doshas. So in Ayurveda, we have this concept of doshas, and commonly in the West, we know Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and people ask, "What's my type?" kind of thing. And from the clinical traditional perspective, that's also not an appropriate way to approach Ayurveda, like what is my type kind of thing. But it's gotten diluted in that way in this country. But nonetheless, it does create these little seeds of awareness in people when they are hearing the word Ayurveda. And so when it comes to Panchakarma, we're expelling the doshas. And so what the doshas are things that are already inherent in each person in a certain quantity or quantum, as a configuration, as a biological constitution. In Greek medicine, they have the humors, and Greek medicine has its origins in Ayurveda. And so knowing like we're removing something through a forceful strategic protocol, um, and as I've been engaging with each patient coming in each week with the PK process, I'm reminding them like we're also removing history because this accumulation is a result of historical content that was not metabolized or processed properly through the normal process of each day and each phase of life and things like that. And so when we're doing anything around, panchakarma, we're forcefully removing the excess accumulation of this material that's stored in the fat and tissues in general, cellular matrix of tissues, tissues of the cellular matrix. Like we're going into like every nook and cranny from head to toe, um, creating this bigger space that's been occupied by things. And um, it's the most advanced, like of a, if we're going to loosely use the word cleansing protocol.
Hmm.
Ayurveda is very deeply scouring. When you're doing palliative care, it's like, oh, you're cleaning your house, you're like, yeah, I'll just kind of like wipe the surfaces and maybe do a quick sweep, maybe a quick mop. But if you really want to clean the house, you pull the washing machine, you pull the stove, you pull the couch, and you deeply clean, remove anything in the background, as much as possible. If you're going to paint a room that has some chipped paint on a wall, you don't just paint over it, you scrape it, then you prime it, and then you paint it properly. And so in the Ayurvedic perspective, that's what we do in Panchakarma. And so when it comes to like historical content, and we think of like diseases, in Ayurveda, there's something called, it's a siddhanta, so it's an inherent in um, it's an inherent sort of topic or concept or teaching, um, known as, it's like Maharogas, which are the eight main, or there are eight main disease considerations, 8 major diseases. So there are Ashta Maharogas. And the top one is Drota, which is fever. And each of the original, you know, authors and primary physicians of Ayurveda that started the entire process from Charaka to Shushruta to Bhagbat, um, each have a chapter on Drota. And of all the diseases that there are, and there's slight differences between the three, that there's 8 Maharogas, there's 10 Maharogas, it's like 12, 13 Maharogas. But regardless, the first one they all note is Drota, which is fever. And Western perspective, we just think, aches, pains, chills, sweating, absence of stool, like temperature change. And Ayurveda is like, yeah, there are variations of like what these can look like, and we know how to look for them, whether it's a subtle fever, it's an overt fever. It doesn't always have to be 101. So if a person's like, well, I'm normally 98, but I'm at 96, there's a temperature change. You know,
Hmm.
there's profuse sweating in some, there's excess sweating in some, there's deficient sweating in some. Digestion gets thrown off. Aches and pains can become more common. And so in Ayurveda, we learn in clinical training, if we can understand Drata front and back, side to side, upside down, you can pretty much understand any disease, past, present, and future. And additionally,
Mm.
with the Maharogas, the Maha is like great diseases, Roga's disease. So the great diseases, you really know the 8 to 10 diseases. You can apply the understanding of that to all diseases, past, present, and future. And with Dvada, it's very tricky because in general, there are like 8 types of Dvada, which correspond with the doshas, their configurations. And then so those are the general inherent internal causes, Nigantu rogas, and the Agantuja rogas, which are like the external causes of disease because you contracted something that infiltrated your system and caused this rippling effect. And then we have basically 2 subcategories, which is like Vishamadvara, which is like it comes and goes.
Hmm.
Um, and then there's Puranadvara, which can be a result of Vishamadvara, where it comes and goes for a long period of time, and it's infiltrated and planted itself in the physiology in such a way that um, it's very deeply rooted. And in many cases, it's incurable but completely manageable. Some of that depends on age and what quality and what quantity, what the cause is, things like that. And so Puranadrata is like an old, like Western medicine, we have COVID and it's like long-term COVID kind of thing. This just means it was a fever that was not absorbed properly, not integrated properly, not cleared properly, not supported properly. And what are some things that can cause something from being improperly managed? And in Western medicine, you get an ache and pain or raise in temperature, and they're taught to take, febrile managers, ibuprofen, Aleve, Excedrin, Advil, you know,
Hmm.
to suppress the thing. And with time, you hope that it suppresses the fever. But in Ayurveda, we want the expression of the fever. We want it to express itself fully so that it goes through its own cooking process. Because fever is a cooking process. Fever is a result of first stage where digestion is compromised. That means the doshas got affected in such a way that they ended up in the stomach in such a way that threw off the normal function of the stomach and its capacity to digest things and displaced it. And so this displacement generally gets recorrected from a proper fasting. So the doshas get cooked. And so if you're following like this light fasting for a certain period of time, even before putting medicines in, because technically it's like indigestion. So if you're putting medicines that don't have digestive capacity, you're creating more indigestion, which means you're
So,
pushing
yeah,
things
like an
deeper.
antacid or
Yeah,
something that people take for heartburn, you're
yeah,
pushing it deeper.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep, yep. And it gets further displaced and accumulates in the background of the tissues. And then with time and repetitiveness of this type of behavior or activity, other diseases can come from this. And then we're just not understanding in Western medicine. where did this come from? Or why is this horrible? Or why hasn't this left me? And it's because the deep aspect of the immune system was compromised. The deep aspect of the physiology was compromised. And so you're now painting on top of that chipped wall.
So let's pause for a second because
Yeah.
this, you know, we are in this conversation because of what I've been experiencing, which in many ways I could say over the last year, but really over the last 30 years. Right. And I think that as we have been on this journey to understand the deep root cause of, as I'm listening, I'm like, oh, I have the stuff that comes and goes. I have the stuff that seems like it's eradicated or it seems like it went away and I'm doing great until I get a cold, until I get COVID, until I eat the wrong thing. And I am on this constant mission to figure out what are the triggers? What are the
Mm-hmm.
triggers? What's making, like, why do I have brain fog right now? Oh, is it perimenopause? Oh, well, that would make sense. Let me track my symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Several of my symptoms seem to track with perimenopause. I am absolutely in the perimenopause age range.
Mm-hmm.
So I could say, oh, I have brain fog. I have what feels like a chronic ongoing fatigue. I have itching, right? Like a histamine flare. I have bloating. I have, right? Like these, swelling in some of my joints, some pain in my joints that like comes and goes. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe I can track it to my menstrual cycle. Oh, is this perimenopause? And then I say, well, actually, some of these symptoms really started to, intensify after I had COVID. Oh, if
Mm-hmm.
I track my symptoms, also when I exercise, which normally like makes me feel better, I am exhausted or I crash and I feel like I have to like not use my brain for several days. My
Mm-hmm.
cognition slows down. I never had slow cognition after dancing or running or being in the heat in the summertime for a really long time. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe these are some of the symptoms that I'm tracking with long COVID, but some people say they're also the symptoms of chronic fatigue syndrome or,
Mm-hmm.
mast cell activation, some form of dysautonomia, nervous system dysregulation. But I've also had like really intense seasonal allergies since I was a child. I've also
Mm-hmm.
had insomnia since I was a child. I've also had chronic chronic sinusitis and chronic sinus infections until I had a surgery to insert balloons to drain, to remove the excess mucus that wasn't draining properly from my sinuses. So when I bring all of this to you, and this again, I want to just pause because I want to, say again for the folks who tune in to us, this is not this show or this conversation is not to replace or to serve as any form of medical diagnosis, and that we are here to share information for a conversational purpose, but it doesn't replace seeing a healthcare professional.
Mm-hmm.
So we just want to name that. But yeah, I'm coming to you with all this stuff and I'm trying to diagnose myself. And you come back to me and say, oh, at the root, we have some repressed fever, old, deep old fevers that keep getting pushed down. And I'm like, oh, wait, wait, but wait. Um, I've been on this journey and I keep taking Advil to address my headaches, and I'm taking antihistamines for my allergies um, and my itching, and that's giving me this temporary relief. I really need this. I'm in pain. I'm itching, I can't breathe. And so hearing this, I think, brings me back to um, like the confusion that we're often experiencing living between these systems, between what Western medicine can tell us, the limitations, right, that we're
Hmm.
experiencing within Western medicine that says, yeah, we put the fever out, like we suppress it, that's what we can do.
Hmm.
If you were to tell me that I just need to like let the fever express itself, that runs counter to everything, right? That
Yeah.
all of the information that I've received. Now my great grandmother might have agreed with you. And we all said, she's out there,
Yeah.
right? But she knew something. So I just wanted to come back
Yeah.
to this.
It's the grandmother medicine. And yes,
Yes.
and like, and in Ayurveda, it's not that, if a person's going to 104, we just want them to go to 104.1. It's like there is obviously a range in Ayurveda that we allow a fever to go to a certain point within a person's individual constitution that won't cause a catastrophe or won't cause death. Of course, we don't want death. So we look carefully for certain signs and symptoms of like, when do we intervene with certain medicines to support the metabolization of the process? In Ayurveda, we don't suppress things. The whole Ayurvedic process itself, because it's rooted in such a tradition, Vedantic sciences. It's a path of consciousness. It's a path of awareness. It's a path of accountability and self-responsibility. This is the thing,
Mm,
that really sets the stage and the tone and sets Ayurveda aside from everything else because it's such a deep-rooted system that has a full-bodied, complete awareness of, every angle of body, mind, and spirit completely.
mm,
It's
mm-hmm,
undeniable. And so knowing that there is this wisdom that's thousands and thousands and thousands of years old and understanding like how forces work, you know, metaphysical forces, physical forces, physics itself, in alignment with the physiology, right? So it's like physics,
mm-hmm.
metaphysics, physiology, it's all interconnected. And so I read we assess all these things. And from this wisdom, you know, it's about increasing awareness and wisdom, never suppression. So when you come for like care, we we don't suppress, we don't look at things. It's
Yes.
very interesting because the past couple of weeks, there's a couple of patients that have come in. They've come kind of taken pause because the head met the head, which is that one patient, there was an awareness to some of the things that she loves doing, which is and I read it's like if you love doing something, do it, right? If it's a pure, true love that your soul vibrates with it. And in some karmas, in some people's like individualized soul contracts, someone else might do the same thing and they won't have a cost on their health. Some people might. And this is where, like in yoga, we say the root cause of evil is comparison. Because you have to understand your own individualized consciousness, your own journey and your path in life, that every step you walk, every breath you take, every time you open your eyes, it's you individualized in the cosmic grandness of things. And there are things that she was actually starting to voice that she had never expressed in general. And she's like, I usually don't confront things. And I jokingly said, well, how do you get over conflicts with your husband? And she's like, we don't talk about the problems. We just push them to the side and just keep going. And they've been together for like 20 years or something. And I'm like, you push it to the side. So here's a suppression of things. And I read it, we bring things to awareness. We bring things to a
Mm-hmm.
resolution through the integration and digestion of the experience. So the suppression never works because it always, 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 always comes sideways. So when we bring it
Yes.
to the physical standpoint, if that's the mental standpoint, if you want to not think about this and you don't want to look at that, you want to just live in an ignorant state. Once it's brought to your awareness, you choose to be ignorant. Now you pay a higher cost for that. So the physical also will manifest symptoms. And when the symptoms are expressing themselves, we want them to express any symptom that is expressing. And Ayurveda we use as tools to see like what's happening on a deeper level from metabolism, digestion, to the integration of the tissues and person's mental state in this process and all these things. and guide it through strategically as quickly as possible. That's practical, right? Never suppressing.
This, okay, so here's where I need to pause, right? So this is where I lit up as a transformational leadership coach because it's like, yes, 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 yes. If I'm working with a leader or with a group in organizations, this is the wisdom that I am also bringing forth as they're trying to acknowledge what is at the root, right? We're
Mhm.
coming here with what we're presenting as the surface level challenge, or the way that we are reacting to changes, to uncertainty. Right now, if you run any nonprofit organization, or any organization committed to social movement work, social justice, any public interest work,
Mhm.
there's so much uncertainty and fear, and the desire to collapse makes sense, right? In the body, this makes sense. The desire to do something temporary, like, okay, let's change our language, but underneath our responses or our reactions to what's happening, there's something deeper that we need to grapple with, but that doesn't always feel accessible to us. And
Mhm.
so I feel like there was so much wisdom. Like I wanted to cry when you said, I mean, I wanted to cry. Um, and I felt that, I think, a similar vulnerability that I think a lot of my clients feel when it's like, wait, this is what is required,
Mhm.
right at the root. Like I am suffering, I'm struggling right now with my health in a way that I never have. I think that in the last year I have felt um more debilitated than I ever have in my life. I am acknowledging that I am disabled, right, and living in that. And then also, there was a call to be responsible. So it just landed for me so much, to be responsible, to be accountable for my health, for transforming, not like taking away some of the pain short term,
Mhm.
not like doing what is needed at the surface, but going back. And I had to go back to like some childhood trauma
Mhm.
to understand what has led to this. And my desire to make it long COVID only, to say that that is because that gives me something I can say to people. Now, long COVID is like not accessible for everyone to understand because it still is not even understood by Western medicine. But at least it's something I can like say, oh, there's symptoms, and I can name that these are the symptoms in the present moment. And this is why I don't have any energy. This is why I can't remember anything. This is why, this is why.
Well,
Um, so I think
mm,
this call to being responsible at a deeper level, being
mhm.
responsive to all that's here as it relates to my health. I know I think from an intellectual standpoint, I can understand the intersections of, a dysregulated nervous system and poor digestion and sleep leading to long-term chronic illness.
Yeah.
But when it comes to me in the moment, all that goes out the door.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
And I
because
just
in the
want to feel
moment when a
better.
symptom is present, it's like the thing that's screaming is the loudest is, the thing that's getting your attention. But we have to understand why did we get to this point of it screaming so loud now? And so just to kind of demystify or
Yes.
disentangle this concept of like what long-term COVID is, it became a new thing because when COVID came around and created this whole new onset of systematic, symptomatology and pathology,
Yeah.
the buzz term has been the long-term COVID. To disentangle it with proper intelligence from the Ayurvedic lens, it's like it took something like COVID, as its own viral inherent form of, disease, to create this concept of association to something long-term. But if we disentangle it from the Ayurveda standpoint, one, it is Purana Dvara, because something that's long distance, that long standing in a person's, system for extreme amount of time. And then, it's understanding, I mean, it's easy it's quick to say that way, that it's like it's a put it on throttle, but what does that really mean? It just means like it took something like COVID for a person to get it brought over the edge. But if they weren't already
Hmm.
at the edge, it wouldn't have been a thing to be brought over the edge with, which means it should be something pre-existing that created this opportunity, which brought it to the next level. And so the
Hmm.
long-term concept is Purana. Purana means long-term, long-standing. And
Hmm.
chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, these are also deep-rooted long-term things that have accumulated to that point of reference in the present moment. And Ayurveda is like, well, why did this person get this now? Because we are
Yes.
all going through lifetime and space and getting things like colds or flus or whatever and things like that in a general scheme of things. Um, but then it's like how it is managed, and then like it's the mismanagement of these things that become misabsorbed or malabsorbed, and then most commonly suppressed, repressed, and then you're building the dam up in the background. Now knowing that that's what you're doing is you want to get to feeling better right away, and so you got rid of that fever within a day or two and all these things, but you've pushed the things in a place where they shouldn't go, which is where the doshas plant themselves, which become Lina dosha or Gambhir dosha or Bahu dosha, which are just different manifestations of the doshas accumulating. So as Bahu dosha, Gambhir dosha is really deep, and the Lina is like hidden. And it's like what's happening in the background. And Ayurveda explains all this and it understands in the present moment, this person has these symptoms. Where did it start from? So it's very common sometimes some of these things start way back in childhood. And any deficits, deficiencies, the child has had repeated access or exposure to antibiotics because of repeated tonsils being aggravated and, respiratory issues and digestive issues and sleep issues as his child. That means the quality of health and immune system is compromised from that young stage of life, which sets the tone for all these other things to come in you know,
Yes.
and it's never just like, oh, I just happen to get this thing right now. No, there's no such thing as you just happen to get this thing right now. If there isn't much in the body, it's like nothing can come from nothing, right? The philosophy. So there has to be something there to add to something to become one plus one plus one plus one. If there was zero there and then you just add one, then it's not so bad. But if it's already like 50, you're at number 50, and then you get the
Hmm.
one thing that brought it over the edge. But you can prevent getting to 50 early on in life, in time and space, and then you have to correct it. So in Ayurveda, we correct the past and the present moment based on what the person's coming in with and why they're here with these kind of things.
Yes. This, I want to acknowledge, two things that are coming up for me. One is my child, right? Who, um, I think as I sit with being a mother and trying to make the right decisions now, and in no way like judging or condemning my own mother who was making the right decisions with the information that she had with a child that had chronic sinusitis and you know I think I was on the pink stuff all the time, like amoxicillin. I and then when that didn't work because I think I became resistant to, or not even resistant, but I
Immune. Yeah.
immune to it. Then they upped it to Augmentin. I was up to the next level, and then it was like the white chalky
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah. More of
um,
that stuff.
right? And so I was on it,
Rather than
um,
understanding why.
all the time,
And the
all the
common the
time.
common, explanation is, well, sometimes kids just get sick. Sometimes this is common in kids. Sometimes
This
it's
is
just,
common.
but it's not common from the standpoint of Ayurveda because it's about health, right? So, um, just to be in with tradition and reading a
Hmm.
shloka on
Thank you.
Vata from Charaka Samhita, um, in a chapter 3, and it's just, so I'm going to read the shloka. And just to emphasize the three main Ayurvedic physicians that really wrote these chapters, these chapters are very extensive. Like the chapter on fever and and Western medicine is nowhere near as elaborate as what Ayurveda talks about. It's like it could be like 120 pages just talking about the fevers, the different types of fevers and their configurations and how to look for them and how to treat them and when not to treat them. And there's a chapter in each of the main texts too called Nidanastan, which is like the causative factors for all diseases, right? It's like Ayurveda has this understanding of, you know, how do all diseases form? And it's like very clear, very succinct, very like it's like, oh, if you want to get these kind of diseases, then and about the foundation of a lot of these diseases is what happens in Ahar and Vihar, which we've talked about, which is diet and lifestyle. Like that's the general, understanding of these kind of things. Um, and it's like as simple as, what is a person eating and what's the person doing in their lifestyle or not doing? It's the absence of these things. And so to imagine seeing like, because when you look at the diseases themselves and you study the diseases individually, it's like, oh, in order to get this disease, this, and this have to happen, And so often it's like, oh, of course, because there's a cause and effect with all these things. Um, and it's a seeing, like, well, how did I get here? And, how do I prevent it? So if you're not in any of these kind of things, um, then how do I, you know, prevent it in the future and at any stage of life, etc. So the shloka, which is cool because it generally sums it up. Um, Tasya prakriturudista doshaha shariram manasaha dehinam nahi nirdosham dvara samu pashevate kshayastamo dvara papma mrityushokta yamatmakaha panchatva pratyanan mrinam klishyatam svena karmana ityasya prakriti prokta. So basically, and these are 3 lines, the 3 physical doshas of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and 2 of the Manasika doshas, which are like the doshas of the mind. So when we think about
Mhm.
doshas, we think Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, but this doesn't really properly address mind. The Manasika doshas are like Rajas and Tamas, where their sattva is like the even state of calmness, and Rajas is like chaotic state and um, fragmentation and anxiety and nervousness, and Tamasa, which is like, inertness, dullness, a lack of clarity, ambiguity, so it's almost like anxious and depression, like we think like those kind of qualities are the factors responsible for drata at the baseline. So basically just saying fever is going to be a result of these doshas and mind states. And
Mhm.
drata cannot originate in a person having the balance of the 3 doshas. So in other words, if a person's in homeostasis, there is no drata, there is no fever. Therefore, these shariraka, which are like the body, and manasika doshas, are the foundation for why fever exists. All the same, by the inherent cosmic consciousness design, the human being is going to be susceptible and prone towards fever. It's the disease that people are inherently born with and will die with on some level in some form, just by design. Now, maintaining homeostasis prevents the quality, quantum, and acceleration or deceleration of, the fever forming. But more than likely, everyone's going to die of this as the primary thing on some level. Kshaya, which is emaciation or depletion. Tama, which is like a feeling of darkness. Drata, fever. Papma, which is like sinful acts, staying up late, having too much sex, drinking too much, smoking cigarettes, smoking drugs, sinful, not in the context of like Christian
Right.
condemnation, judgment. It's like inappropriate acts.
Mhm.
Mrityu, which is death, are all of the various presentations of Yamaraja, which is lords of death. So these kind of things of living out of balance, living in disequilibrium, living in a stressful environment that causes you to make choices you can't think about that would be counterintuitive what you do it because you can't think any clearly. These are the causes of death. And individuals suffering from various grievances due to their own deeds and hence have been accepted to equivalent, the Lord of Death. So this foundation is like what causes a person to get ill? What part causes a person to be susceptible to these things is eating inappropriate foods for a person's constitution, eating at inappropriate times, you know, all the daily practices that just aren't there or should be there or they're in excess or misappropriated, like all of these things create the foundation for like any fever. And then, we add in Western medicines that, sometimes can help for short term. Most times that short term is a deficit to the compromise of the integrity of the doshas that causes these things to get pushed into a dam. And then this dam, when you're creating a dam in an environment, in a location in a geography that shouldn't be placed there, of course, the displacement will occur where now you're flooding the forest in the background and you're destroying the forest because you shouldn't have put a dam there. And so it's going to go sideways. So anything that you suppress and it's inappropriate goes sideways. And then it has a cumulative effect and it has a magnetic effect because if the doshas are already compromised, digestion's compromised, you're more susceptible to these kinds of things. And so we can group in things like allergies and, allergies to like pollen, allergies to like foods, sensitivities to
Hmm.
these kind of things. This is all a dysfunction of what's happening on a cellular level from digestion to all the tissues because most of these things shouldn't happen. And then also we live in a culture and consciousness in the world today. We're in a state of excess and everything, especially in the West, is inundated with poisons, all the
Hmm.
food coloring and high fructose corn syrup and triglycerides and all these kind of, like all these kind of things that are not properly like, in other countries, you're having to dodge poison all the time. So your system's already going to be susceptible to things.
Yes.
And so it's like, how do we reduce these things? Again, in Ayurveda, it's like daily practices of when you're waking up, when you're going to sleep, when you're eating, are you eating appropriately per constitution, per digestive capacity, per season, and in the environment that you're in, and all the lifestyle practices that go with that to support that, to mitigate or reduce the acceleration, accumulation of the doshas. There are stages of disease in Ayurveda that we follow. So one is just a basic Chaya Prakopa Prashamana, which is like as when we look at the seasons, certain things, it's like there's an accumulation, aggravation, and an alleviation stage. So Chaya Prakopa
Hmm.
Prashamana. And so as we're coming out of summer, coming into the fall, there's the um Prakopa, which is like the accumulation or the aggravation of Vata going into Vata season, because now we're going into its own season that's accumulating. That's it. Say August into September was the beginning accumulation of that. But
Hmm.
while we were still in the grasp of summer, the fact that there was this overlap, this Ritu Sandhi, seasonal transition, the Vata is accumulating and Pitta is being slightly pacified. So it's going into Prashamana, which is like a pacification. If Pitta doesn't pacify properly by natural state of seasonal changes, or like in its aggravated state, Prakopa, it's aggravated, it's hot, you're irritable, breaking out, sweating, intensely smelling, kind of sour. By the sign of fall entering, those symptoms subside.
Hmm.
If it doesn't subside, that's the beginning stage of called prasada, which is the basic next level of disease accumulating in the wrong direction. So if the seasons aren't helping the symptoms to subside, you're in the other category of things are now going in a wrong direction. And that means you're going to be set up for like, well, not only is Vata season here and I'm getting aggravated with Vata things, Pitta's still also getting aggravated because it didn't get resolved. And so we're looking at the seasons for our things. And so going back to the original point, we're in homeostasis and we're living according to the seasons, and we naturally feel like, yeah, every season I kind of do the thing and it seems to be fine. Vata gets pacified, Pitta gets aggravated, and it's, all these kind of things. And I'm changing my diet and wearing more layers because it's seasonally appropriate now. Like, then I'm in a better place, which means I'm least likely to incur getting sick. But if you're like, well, I'm still going to keep doing and wear shorts because it's 70 today, even though it's October, this is misuse of intelligence, which is pranya parada, which I know you love this word. And it's understanding like the mind is very unruly, which is Rajas and Tamas. So that's why
Mhm.
like this shloka, you know, of Charaka Sutrastan 13, 3, 12 to 13 is saying if we're in homeostasis, we're good. But body is in homeostasis also depends on mind, which is a manasika dosha. So if the mind is flip-flopping, you're not going to make clear decisions. You're just going to be like, I don't care. It's 70 degrees. I'm going to wear shorts and in flip-flops anyways. And it's like, okay, well, when you get your allergies or congestion or respiratory asthma, things like that in January, February, note that the body is a historical system. It's going to remember what you did in the fall. So if you didn't do it properly, it will come later. And you're like, why did this happen? Or I used to stay up in my 20s, but now I'm in my 60s and I have osteoporosis. Of course you do, because
I
Ayurveda says causative factors don't escape the immediate, like, well, I'm starting to eat healthy now for the past 3 months. That's okay. The past 30 years, you were not. You can't escape time. Time eventually engulfs you one way or another. And while you're in your body, if you're making choices in the past, they will come to get you today. The body doesn't lie, you know?
No, it does
So
not.
when it's not, when it's suppressed, you know, if you're with a partner, husband, wife, they, them, whoever, and they annoy you and you want to say something but you don't, and then you just move forward, and 3 months later they do something again, and 3 months later they do something again, and then finally you snap. But it's because the past 6 times you didn't say it, now it becomes this momentum and you become volatile and angry, and they're like, oh my God, why are you so angry? I didn't know all this. I wish you told me before. But now it's like, well, you were suppressing it, so it's going to come out in other ways. It always does. You can't, it's like addiction. It's like you're suppressing something to feel something else because you don't want to feel the thing, and there aren't enough tools, even if you're not in addiction or in a non-addiction. We all have addictions to some capacity, even if it's not meth, heroin, or any of these kind of
That's
overt
right.
intensities. It's like I don't feel good right now, so I'm going to try to do the next best thing to make me feel good. This fever's a little uncomfortable. I'll take Advil. I'll get rid of it fast. Yeah, well, now you just created a whole other paradigm that's going to get you later for a fact, you know.
I wanna wrap us, but
Hmm.
also I'm feeling this part too. because because we've opened this larger conversation that I'm really feeling into around like life leadership, how you lead in your life. That is an app. It is a practice of being responsive and responsible. And you're speaking to a level of responsibility that I feel is uh, called for in so many ways right now for so many. And maybe the fevers that are being repressed are showing up as agitation or blowing up, or the responses from repressed rage, or the responses from ignoring your own boundaries, and not being honest about your needs in relationship, in many aspects of your life. And I made a very clear connection the minute that you said that this was about old fevers. That's how I wrote it in my notes in my phone. I was like, he just said I was sick from old fevers. And I immediately went to, there's also old rage. It is not an accident, for me, as I'm a pull in the astrology, and you know this, that um, over the period where I felt the most destabilized by this chronic illness over the last year, we were in a transit in Western astrology. We were in a transit, or tropical astrology of Mars and Cancer, and to put that uh, to like shorten it so we can come back to it. Uh, I very clearly, as someone who's Cancer rising, and so knowing that this is governing my body, right? And that the way that my body would experience this transit would be to pay attention to Mars like stuff in and around my body, the fire, the flame, the rage, the conflict. And Mars doesn't want to be in Cancer because that's, you're like in this nurturing womb, the waters. This is where you're going to feel boiling steam. This is not where Mars is happy. This is not where Mars is able to realize its energetic potential for fire, for moving fast, for speed. And my brain slowed all the way down, and my body swole all the way up. and um, and the call for me, I know in my own personal transformation, has been to pay attention to the repressed rage, the fires that I have not acknowledged, that I've been trying to suppress, and the override or the ignoring of my own needs. And this is important as I see it expressed in my health. And I went there immediately and I was like, how am I explaining this to people? Why do I care about explaining it to people? I do, right? And I think that's a part of it. But what I really felt in our conversation was what would allow me to express, to remove the stuff of history that lives in my body. And that's where we are. This is the kind of medicine,
Hmm.
the practice that is holistic, because I am paying attention to all of the fires that I have been suppressing and repressing
Hmm.
at this big age. So I want to thank you. I want to come back to this wisdom um, next month. I hope I can share progress because we are working at the root right now. We have released the dam. We have broken the dam. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, yeah, we broke it down.
We broke the
We're
dam.
breaking it
We're
down.
breaking the dam. I'm in a process, y'all. And and I'm hopeful. And I'm itching right now, but I know
Yeah.
that I can tolerate this itch. It's calling me to pay attention to what I think would give me temporary relief, that would not truly address what is at the root. So I want to thank you, Dr. A, and invite you if there's anything you'd like to share as we close out, especially inviting people to come find you.
Yeah, just to kind of close some points, the one patient that is taking pause right now, the one that is, the one that doesn't like to confront things, you know, I expressed to her, I said, yeah, she said, well, maybe Ayurveda is not the thing. And I said, that's fine. Like Ayurveda is for everyone. It's a universal system. But not everyone might be for it because of this level of involvement, depth, and Ayurveda's support can guide through people through. Um, and I said, but one, I do my due diligence as a clinician to give you the information that's understood. And you could choose to not do Ayurveda and say like, well, if I don't do Ayurveda, then that means it's not is not true. No, it still means it's true. It just means you choose not to continue to process. But when I've given you that knock of consciousness on the door, this is where a lot of us can fall into that trap of like, I'm just going to ignore this. It's not going to go away
Mhm.
because reality is we can't escape these things. So you could choose to ignore Ayurveda. It doesn't mean what you're experiencing is going to go away, right? Ayurveda will help with that. Two, um, like in her case, for example, if it is in fact a karmic thing that even if she's doing the thing she loves and she's suffering some consequences because of it, Ayurveda is like, yes, we don't want to take the love away, but Ayurveda can either help resolve karmic issues that you come into this life with, or soul things that you come into this life with, or it can support you just to be able to manage nonetheless. So you can still do the thing you love, but you have to do Ayurveda to kind of support as a backbone the longevity of both, you know, because we don't want to take away the thing that you love. I mean, if it's inappropriate to you, if you're just like, I like heroin, I'm just gonna love this forever. No, Ayurveda is like, then maybe not. But if you like exercising and you like going to biking and this is your passion, this is your love, this is what drives you, for whatever reason, that's your karmic thing, and you happen to get symptoms as a result of it, which can be unfortunate, but it's reality. then Ayurveda will support the tissue so you can keep doing this until you figure out within your own consciousness, you know?
Hmm.
And um it's never about the judgment of it. It sounds like it's judgy, but it's actually not judgy. It's just using proper judgment to discern things. And that's the thing that has to be understood. And so in Ayurveda, there's also no quick fix. And, this is the work. There's work that has to be involved. And so if you're looking for a quick fix and you're coming with a chief complaint and you're like, I just need something to get rid of this, why do you have this? And what do we need to undo so you don't have this? Not suppress it, not avoid it, because it will in fact come back. It always
That's
does.
right.
Mental,
Oh,
and also the other thing to complete before we close is just like because the Sharira doshas, the physiological doshas of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha can affect the mind, Manasika doshas can affect the body. So it's like the mind's unruly making choices, the body is being thrown around. Of course, it's going to get aggravated. And when we flip it and understand, like, well, maybe I'm feeling angry all the time, and it's because my liver and gallbladder and like my blood is inundated. So I need to correct the physiology so that my mind is at ease. Like it's
hmm
not it's mutually inclusive because anger can come from like Rajas or Tamas, depending, and then we do things to correct it. But if it's because the body is accumulating something like waste products, it causes irritation, it causes dullness, it causes anger. So it's understanding like where is the anger really coming from? Is it a physiological imbalance that gets corrected? Or is it the mental thing that's affecting the physical thing? Like we have to work with both together, but see what's the one that's causing the other. And so these are the things to consider with Ayurveda. And I always love the journey of exploring with each person, like where are they at, what are they capable of, what are they coming in with, what do they want to do, what do they have the capacity to do? Because what they want to do and what they have the capacity to do can be sometimes two different things. And we can go as lightly as possible or as heavily as possible. And again, sometimes maybe Ayurveda is not for you for now, but I plant the seed and hopefully, but there is a guarantee that Ayurveda is by far the most advanced system in understanding all these things more than any of the holistic models that exist today. And we're all friends. We all get along, like homeopathy, naturopathy, you know, aspects of functional medicine, but I feel, maybe slightly biased, but also not because I studied some of the other medicines anyways, and Ayurveda really has this capacity. So I
hmm
invite everyone to figure it out and explore the journey and see. And I'm very passionate about what I do, and you can find me at stillpointayurveda.com in Philly, and I do, telehealth sessions and I do in-person sessions, and um, yes.
Oh, yes, he's not here for play play. This is transformational health. That is exactly how I'm experiencing it. And I thank you for being my partner in getting to the deep root cause, um, because I think that is the most liberatory invitation I could possibly experience. And it's calling me forward to truly living in my life, to being embodied. I thank you, Dr. A. We're going to see you next month,
Yep.
and we'll see you all next month. Until then, trust your gut. All right.